Unlimited. Wait. Unlearned Unlimited. Yeah. Hey. Unlimited.
Hello, welcome to Unlearned Unlimited. My name is Dr. Sito Narcisse. I got my co-host,
Tatiana Echevarria.
Yo, and it's going to be a banger. We're super excited because we got Malik Ray. I like to call him Dr. Malik
Speak
Ray.
it into existence. Why not?
Right, speak it into existence, but it's Malik Ray in the house. Malik Ray, let me tell you a little bit about him, but let's tell you about our title first. It's going to be the new playbook for educational leaders. Why most school leaders are led by followers. That's kind of our little bit of a question. We figured if we're going to talk about stuff like that, why not bring in somebody who works with a lot of leaders and works with superintendents across the country and talk through a lot of those things to see like, what's the realness around why things are the way they are, Tatiana? Mm-hmm. And as you know with us, we don't tend to hold back in these conversations. So we're super excited. We got a really smart brother here with us, Malik, who's done exceptional stuff around the country. Malik, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sito and Tatiana. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we are hyped up, were we not?
I know. I'm excited to have you. You have a diverse background for a couple different things you've done. Former educator, you stepped away from that for a little bit, and then now you're back working with superintendents. So we're excited for you to, before we get into all our questions and such, to tell us a little bit about you from obviously the expert himself that's been walking your walk. So share a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me again, Sito and Tatiana. I'm really excited to be here, and congratulations on the success of the podcast so far. We're on an upward trajectory here. Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking that question, first of all, because I think it's important to explain that a Dr. Sito Narcisse doesn't happen overnight. It's important to explain that we have lived experiences. We are more than our professional churnout, right? Like, it's important that you all show up in t-shirts and that we wear our tattoos out because someone watching is going to realize that we are not that different from them, right? Like,
that's correct.
There's not too much that sets us apart other than some life circumstances and a bit of grit, right? So thank you for asking that question. I'd like to take it kind of from the top and allow it to sort of inform where we go from here. I was born in South Philly to a mother and father who loved me very much, but we didn't have very much. Our family was rich in spirit, but not monetarily necessarily. But my great-grandfather, who was light-skinned enough to be passable, attended Catholic school for his upbringing, and it was his first inkling of like, this thing, the school thing is really shifting people's lives for some reason, right? And so as the generations, descend, I was born, and it was very clear from about as early as I could comprehend that education was not an option. It was mandatory. It was not if you're going to college, it was what college are you going to? And he was really hard on my mom at making sure we had the best opportunities. And she did that for us. So grateful to you, Mom, if you ever see this. But I went to boarding school for a lot of my life. 4th grade to 12th grade, I was in boarding school. Yeah, and that was my fourth. Yes, in Pennsylvania. It's called Girard College. It's a boarding school. We tested in. I was dealing with a lot of the things that comes with being different in the public school environment. I was getting bullied. The curriculum was too slow for my pace of learning, and so I was having behaviors. There were just a lot of circumstances that led to that situation. The best thing my mom has ever done for me and my sister was put us into boarding school. Rocked from there all the way up through, I guess, about 10th or 11th grade. She's like, all right, well, remember, Grandpa was talking about school, it's go time. And Malik was listening to a lot of people around him, not a lot of lived experience. I wanted to go to a white school where I would be the minority, where I would receive scholarships to be able to fund that bad boy. And my mom wanted me to go to an HBCU. My mother hadn't gone to college, neither had my father. I am a first gen. But she wanted me to go to an HBCU.
For that.
Thank you kindly.
Isn't that interesting? So your mom didn't go to college anything, but she was like, you got to go to HBCU. Ain't that an interesting thing?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
I wanted you to have that experience with people that looks like you.
Right.
Both of my parents were big on that growing up. I haven't always been, right? Like, I remember watching the Disney Channel and my dad being like, why you got all these, you know what I mean? Like, why ain't no black shows on here? It's like, And I thought, we kind of, you're just an old guy. You don't know what you're talking about. But like the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah, he was right. Where were the black shoes on
Right.
Disney Channel? You know what I mean? And so they've
So
always been like,
how'd you end up selecting Morehouse?
yeah. So my mom forced me to go on a college tour. She put
Was
me
it
on a
HBCU
bus with
tour?
HBCU college tour. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Put me on a bus with a bunch of other juniors, and we drove down to the south part of the United States, southeast United States, and we toured all around. The last stop on the tour was Spellhouse. We got to Morehouse, and probably in 10 minutes, I was like, oh yeah, I need to be here. Right? Suddenly everything started to shift. All of the stuff my mom was talking about being around my people, I thought that I had taken what I needed to take from the Black experience. I went to school with Black kids all of my life. Going to Morehouse opened my eyes for the first time, and it revealed to me that there are different archetypes of the Black man. I was meeting rich people. I was meeting poor people. Everyone was valedictorian and salutatorian. It really sealed the deal on what excellence meant for me. And I knew I wanted to be one of those guys. I went home. I was like, yes, Mom. And she's like, really? So she's like, whatever you say. You want to go there? Let's do it. Yeah, that's my girl. That is my girl. But I got to Morehouse.
Wait, before you get to that, just one thing I just thought on my mind when he's saying that. Isn't that crazy? Because most folks don't have this wide range, especially of minority men, right? Being like educated and those things, because I went to college in Atlanta too. So like once my family saw that, they were like, wait a minute, like this is a place you got to go.
Yeah,
right?
the level of exposure that you had in that moment was really life altering.
Yeah, and it
can't be what you can't see.
Difference. Well, yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference. And I know it's a whole conversation for a whole nother show.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it resonated with me that you were able to see that because I mean, there's a lot of folks who went to HBCUs that are successful in a lot of different spaces. But seeing that dichotomy, I think, makes a difference whether you're male, female, whoever you are around that stuff. So
I think, we talk about often, and especially in education, which we'll get there. I'm loving your story already, but like representation matters, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
For sure. So sorry, continue. You choose Morehouse.
Morehouse, the
house. You did the thing.
Yes, I knew what I wanted to do. I thought anyway. I really did know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a marketer. My life goal when I got to college was to be the CMO of GQ magazine. That's what I was going to do with my life.
Okay.
So I did what I was supposed to do.
You look a little snazzy. You look a little snazzy.
All right, Tatiana. All right, gas me up. We real early. Gas me up. I love it. Thank you. And so I did the thing. I went to the business school at Morehouse, and I followed a pretty traditional path. I thought I was going to anyway. You go to the B school, you get the job at IBM, you make a nice living for a freshly graduated student, and you ride your way up. Well, in 2012, Trayvon Martin died. And I started to reckon with the idea that this neighborhood that I'm going to school in, that I've been living in, the little kids, Morehouse is an open city campus, and so we are very much a part of the neighborhood over there. The little kids in the community might never have a chance to step foot on this campus, not because they don't deserve to be, not because they're not academically capable, but because of the cards that life had dealt them. Right? I started to realize in Trayvon Martin's death that I was living in a system that was not set up or designed at all for me to be successful. That these people that I was around, we were anomaly, right? Like this was not supposed to happen to us by design. And so my heart changed, right? I wanted to get into impact work. What did that look like when I had the thought? I don't know, but I thought little kids, right? Like if I can show a little kid that, there are people that look like you that are trying to get out of where we are. If I could show a kid at 8 years old that gay people are not scary, right? If I could show a kid that it's okay to be yourself and be successful and capable, like none of this stuff is mutually exclusive. You know what I mean? And so I applied to TFA. Still didn't really want to teach. I'm like, that's not what I went to school for. I don't want to be a teacher. So I'm a pretty faithful guy. And so I started to talk to God about it. And like, hey, if this is supposed to happen, show me. So of course, in a way that he does, it's like, oh, I'm not going. This is only 10% of applicants get it. I'm probably not going to get it. Got skipped right to the final round interview. Inkling one, right? Like, all right, must be up to something. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm not doing it unless I can teach elementary school. They're like, oh, there's like 22 slots in Georgia total. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not doing it if I can't teach elementary. Of course, I get elementary. Get inside the elementary program. I'm like, well, I want to teach second grade because they're not going to test those kids.
You were in Atlanta public schools, right?
Yep, APS.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Home team. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, if you don't give me second grade, I'm not doing it. Of course, I get second grade. And so I started to get the inkling that I was where I was supposed to be. There was something else that I was supposed to accomplish here. I did
Yeah.
4 years with Teach for America, and
Yeah.
I haven't looked back. Uh, After I did the 4 years, I think it's important to share this part too. I left the classroom, not because I didn't
Mhm.
like the job. I loved teaching. Like I went home feeling like Superman every day. Um, but I was going home eating like ramen noodles for dinner, right? And so
Mhm.
I,
Mhm.
I, I- I'm bringing it up as a point of discussion because you all have a lot of viewers, and I want to talk about like how we treat
Yes. I mean,
our
yeah,
educators
making
in
money
this
is a real
country.
thing
And
in education.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
it wasn't that I didn't want to be there; it was that I needed to live. And so
Yeah.
I left the classroom. I went to the next most lucrative thing that someone told me, which was financial advising. Y'all,
I
I did
saw
that
that.
for a
That's
year.
quite that was quite a pivot.
Let me tell you something, Tatiana. I It's the first thing I've ever done in my life that I fully committed myself to that I just could not win at, right? I got the licenses, I did all of that. I never got a spark. Nothing ever clicked. So after about a year, and I'm like, you're wasting time, you're wasting money. Get out of here. Go do, if it's not going to be teaching, what is it going to be? I did adult learning. I went to this company called World 50. And what they do is they build peer groups for C-suite executives. So I'm
Mm,
running a marketing group, a chief digital officer group, chief human resource officer group of the world's largest companies. Like we're Fortune 500, we're talking like Fortune 50. You know what I mean? Like these are pretty powerful folks. So I really got to
Wow.
dive, I spent 5 years there, and I really got to dive deep and be in some really powerful rooms and learn what's happening in the minds of the most successful people, essentially in the
mm,
world, certainly in this country. The
Mhm.
things that they have top of mind, the way that they think as far as how far out, the topic du jours that are causing them angst, keeping them up at night. It was fascinating. And I remember thinking, God, I wish I could have brought my principals to this. Or like, I wish that there was something like this for instructional coaches. And then, or maybe even a superintendent. 5 years down the road, I stumble upon leading now, this job description that is describing uh, the melting pot of someone who is passionate about education and wants
mhm.
to help upskill the sort of future of educational impact. And that is sort of how I landed at leading now. It was a long story, but that's
No,
how I
that's
got where I am.
beautiful. That was great. That
Yeah,
was such a great journey to
that's right.
take with you and how you landed to where you are now. So yeah, that's
Thanks.
great.
When
Thank
you're
you.
talking about your story, just a lot of stuff kind of resonate. And we talk about like different things like this on previous shows around pivoting and exposure and how those things build your self confidence. What I probably found like really fascinating in this story, like what I was thinking about was what we think about and what we think people who are the influencers of the world think about and what the regular folks that are living every day think about. Once you get exposed to that world, you begin to see like, wow, the world is different in different people's eyes, right? I mean, so just thinking about when you talked about you sat in this room with people from Fortune 50 or whatever companies and how they think about things, and then how you're person that wakes up every morning, the average Joe that's walking in to engage, how it's almost like disconnected a little bit. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. There's the strategic thinking that happens in the executive level of any organization is not always directly translated at the bottom line. And that was
Yeah,
one of the major learnings. The second of which is community matters, right? Like
yeah,
the higher you
Mm.
yeah,
get, the more lonely the job becomes. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
literally building rooms for connection,
yeah.
So
it's
so
why that
let's
company does so
actually
well.
that's so let's talk about that. So,
Uh-huh.
you know, part of what you shared is, the strategizing, the community. And maybe that's where education sometimes has some outdated models and
Mm-hmm.
where we may be missing the mark.
Uh-huh.
And so, let's get nitty gritty. Let's not
Yeah.
hold back.
Yep.
Let's, keep it a buck, how, the young people say.
Yep.
I'm part of that young people crowd. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, so why, in your experience and what you're doing now and working with heads of school systems,
Uh-huh.
why are so many educational leaders, seemingly sticking to like these outdated models that we know, especially for Black and Brown students, students with disabilities, students who just learn differently, okay? Because you don't even have to have a disability, you just learn differently.
Yeah.
Um, what's happening there? Why are we sticking to these models? Why are we not innovating enough? What are you kind of hearing in that in the space that you're in with so many of these individuals?
Yeah. Yeah. And I might ask you to repeat it in a
Yes,
second,
yeah.
Tatiana, just to make sure that I'm answering everything. But let me tell you a bit about what we do, who we are, and that might help
Mhm.
inform how deep this can go. Uh, Leading Now is a national community of superintendents. It's built for superintendents by people who understand the complexities that they're navigating. Uh,
Mhm.
just born out of recognition that the role of superintendent has fundamentally changed. You think about the CRT conversations that were happening. That's sort of where we were born. We were born in that time period, really loud on either side politically. Our co-founders, Maura and Caitlin, education champions in their own right, they were getting the inkling that, hey, the people that this conversation will impact the most, students and system leaders, they're not really having that conversation yet. So they designed a 15-week program. They peer-to-peer sort of networking, brought together 22 soups from around the country, and they built this pilot designed to troubleshoot the pain points that they were associating with the CRT discussion. Well, 15 weeks goes by, and now the soups are kind of looking up at them going, well, where are you going? We get the
Yeah.
CRT thing, but give it 2 months. There's going to be something else on my desk that I'm going to need this group support for. Starting to get the inkling that there was a desire for some sustainability there. The reality is the role is no longer about academic leadership specifically. They are academic leaders
Mhm.
and public figures. Superintendents now need to be political strategists, right? They need to be trusted, which involves effective communication. And so that is the acute lane that we have carved out. Strategic communication skill development, all centered around superintendents as public officials. Because it's a necessary part of the job. We saw that, we needed support that met the moment. These folks are dealing with
Mhm.
political attacks. They're dealing with disinformation campaigns against a singular person, intense community division in this sort of political climate that we're living in. We exist to provide those strategic comms, public engagement trainings, that on-time crisis support is what we do well and how we attempt to support superintendents. Okay, now I got to answer your question,
Yeah.
Tatiana.
Yeah.
What are we seeing? What are we seeing?
Mhm.
Why are some leaders being classified as sort of run of the mill, as followers,
Mhm.
as people not pushing
Outdated.
hard enough against
Yeah.
the status quo? Yeah, outdated. Yep.
Yeah.
What I am finding from my experience chatting with soups around the country is folks are nervous. This political environment, this budgetary environment, uh, you're an email, a text message, a handshake, an eye contact moment away from losing, or maybe not losing, but ruffling someone's feathers to the point that they attempt to ruffle the feathers that you've put in place for children, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
They're also now playing with your livelihood because you need to keep your lights on. And so these powers that be, the sort of political games that are being played with students dangling from the puppet strings, are affecting the way that superintendents feel that they can lead most effectively. Rarely am I on the phone with a superintendent and they don't know what the needle mover is going to be. What they're
Mm.
really thinking about is, how do I play this smart?
Made
I
for
need to
them.
keep my job
Mm.
and I need this to happen for my kids. Me going down, kicking a door open, long gone are those days. I need to figure out who is going to be in the voting party to help make this decision and what is it that they need or they want to see be true of our community for our children. And we need to work backwards. We're talking about a strategy game here. Being passionate, it's not enough anymore. And so the answer is, I'm seeing nerves. Contention is at an all-time high. And these are folks who want to stay in the role to get things done for children. And they're folks who want to feed their families at night. And so that involves a delicate balancing game. And that's the most common sentiment I'm seeing around that.
So if I hear what you're saying that it's not that leaders don't want to try to do the right thing. It's just that the environment sets up for them to, if they push too hard, then that means that, they could not be in that job, which would take away their livelihood. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Sometimes it's, I don't want to push too hard about this thing. I don't want to push too hard about this segment of kids because it won't resonate well with my supporters. And
Mhm.
sometimes there are internal agendas, right? Like
Mm.
full on stopping a superintendent in their tracks, right? Because the board is helping the superintendent make decisions about anything happening
if they're a
district-wide.
cooperative board.
If they are a cooperative board, right? And so that's exactly where I'm going, Sito, right? The superintendent has all of these plans and initiatives and strategies, but they have to take it to the board for approval. And what I'm finding, and this is no shade to any board member who might, observe this, but what I'm finding is the superintendent is backing kids. The superintendent is driving initiatives forward. Where things get halted is in the red, the signing of the deal, implementation plan. Yeah, it's not always the superintendent. They wear the crown, and so it's heavy, and so they often are the receivers of any energy. But I find that it's a group effort, and the superintendent is often falling on the sword for a group of people that help support them, which many of them are honored to do, right? Like they feel it's their duty, but it doesn't make it normal or okay, and it's a sign of the times.
So let me just clarify something for the audience so they can know, so they know what a superintendent is. So a superintendent is somebody that they choose to lead the district and does the day-to-day operations of the school district on behalf of a school board, right? Some have boards. If you're in New York and those other places, that's driven by a mayor, but they still have somebody in charge of them to do that. And the way the system should work is that the people elect board members, and the board members that they elect are the ones that choose a superintendent.
And that varies state by state, though.
That varies.
I know when I lived in Tallahassee, selection for superintendent was done. We voted for them versus here in Duval, it was not voted for.
Correct.
So it just depends, even state by state in the state.
So if you are in Maryland, for example, or if you're in Georgia, these other states, or in California, like each of the states vary in terms of, like you say,
how they select their superintendent. Yes, correct.
But what nobody understands, I think, what makes the complexity for that job is that what everyone believes that any decision that is made, the superintendent made it. And what they don't see is actually the superintendent may put an agenda or something they want to do, but they have to get the actual votes.
Right. It has to be approved, usually by the board.
Yes. Unless they're working for a mayor, or if it's a state takeover or something like that, they can go ahead and just do the work and those things, right? But there's these politics that play. And so everybody's upset, right? Like teacher pay. People say, oh, it's the superintendent. Well, it's not a superintendent. The superintendent has a board that has to approve the teacher pay or the curriculum or and this varies by states. And the reason I want to bring this up is because I think what's really the bigger question to me is not just about the superintendent job, but it's about the system itself. Because there's many people that talk about that system structure is broken. If you want to do something that's actually meaningful for kids or help teachers or those things, they say that system is broken because the influential spaces
that be
are the ones that are really pushing these strings to perform or to do what they want to do. And it's also the unspoken thing, right?
Well,
right?
I mean, I think you and Malik, I think you brought this up so well in the sense that we know hands down that education has become a highly politicized landscape. And due to that, you're now juxtaposing people who are advocates for kids. And I'm not saying that politics and people engaged in politics are not advocates for kids. I want to clarify that. But you have individuals who, let's call a spade, actually have worked in school systems that have familiarity with working in school systems and what the realities are. And then you got the folks who are telling you to do things that have never stepped a foot in a school and have probably had very different schooling experiences, if you know what I mean, that are then engaged in trying to make decisions for that. So it's quite a doozy to put together.
Yeah, and to your point, Tatiana, it's like this is not everywhere, right? Like a pretty significant portion of my superintendents have great superintendent board dynamics, but you're right, Tatiana, in that the system could use a bit of tweaking, right? Because what I can share is I don't know of a ton of school boards that feature, to the point you just made, former educators, people who really understand what's happening at the ground level in the classroom. And so, and while, we could feel that's right or wrong. The real strategic game here is for the superintendent is, then why are you here? Right? Like if that is not the case, if I don't have firm evidence that this is a student-centered, a student impact pro person, what are you doing here? Now that you are on my board, now that we will have to work together, how do I figure out what's going to motivate you intrinsically so that we can get across the aisle from our politics and down the middle for kids? So that's the sort of strategy game that they're playing, right? They've recognized that, hey, it's not all good, right? Boards turn over. Sometimes you get folks that may not be in it for the right reason. Sometimes you get folks that are going to truly sit with you and drive the needle forward for kids. But the superintendent's role is at all times to really understand the complexities that they're facing and work backwards to build a plan forward to get some agreement from this diverse sort of set of folks that is the school board.
It's interesting. I was just thinking, I wonder if those dynamics are the same for university presidents and all these other,
because they also function within boards.
That's correct.
As well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. That's interesting. I want to delve a little bit deeper into, since you work with a collection, if that's the right way to say it, but a cohort of superintendents, how do they support each other as they themselves navigate, whether it's from one state to another? But I would assume, often face some similar challenges. How do they collaborate together and navigate, the atmosphere that education currently finds itself in?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's my job, to convene them, to one, develop them in ways that feel useful, worth the superintendent's time, which is always scarce. But we do it in a few ways, and I can get to them in a second. There are 3 ways that we attempt to support from the strategic comms angle, but the most powerful piece that I've found, and it's not written down on paper, right? It's been the power of community, right? The power of diverse experiences, supporting kids who may not, learning about kids who may not look like the ones that you support, learning about challenges in a state that you've never been to and don't really understand the dynamics in, and allowing that to inform what's happening in your local context, right? You were hinting at it, but there is power in sort of similar community, right? Like there's power in rural superintendents talking to rural superintendents. There is power in, Ohio superintendents gathering for Ohio-based challenges. But the power of perspective has been the reason that we were able to get to 240 members in these 3 years. We're represented in over 40 states today. And the thing that I continue to hear folks not want to leave us for is the community approach. We run a consultancy called Problems of Practice, and that really is it's a solve my problem time for a superintendent. So Tatiana texts me and she's like, hey, Malik, I got to put my bond referendum up in front of the board in 2 weeks. I'm not sure if I'm getting it right. Who else is thinking about something like this? They get a room full of peers.
At the same time,
exactly.
Who's gotten it approved already, or things.
Do I need to reinvent the wheel? Who else is working on something like this? Did they get it approved? What were the tips there? So what I do is, I'm a convener, right? So I'll go get 7 or 8 other soups. Yeah, and we're going to solve your challenge together. So you get that perspective of, here's how we thought about it in California. Here's why it didn't work in Florida. Here's how we might have tried to do it in Pennsylvania, but couldn't get to it. That sort of perspective. And so the power of the national community is a real sticking point for their development.
Do you think it's a space of it's a space of just safety, right? Like I could say what I want to say and do whatever, because I got to get in front of everybody else and show them that I got it all together, right? I'm gonna, I can say this. I've engaged with a lot of superintendent or executive level folks in my career in a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
And then as I got those jobs too, but I found that you do the job long enough and you got to learn what to say, what not to say. How do you show you have this together when you may not have it together? There's all these things, and most people don't see them in a human space, right? Because they see the position and the title and all that stuff.
Yeah, the ivory tower thing.
You, to maintain that over time, right? No matter how confident they are in front of you, right? or they articulate well, even when they know sometimes a decision's right, they sometimes will say, I got to take my time to do this, because if I don't do it this way, I might get fired. Or if I don't do it like this, somebody's going to get upset. Or if I don't do it this way, I'm going to piss off this person, that person. And that pissing off can be a whole range of people. It could be from a board member, a politician, to whoever's in the state, to you. I mean, it's so like, you know, the reason I bring this up is because, you know, we wanted to talk to you about this whole thing around, like, these leaders are followers, or they're people who are doing what they need to do. And it goes back to me around the system. I don't think the system is designed in a way to allow them always to have that courage. I mean, I would argue there are only very few of leaders at that level that I could probably count that says, like, they will do what they got to do, but they are strategic about it, right? So they'll say, okay, I got to set this up for this to happen. But I also know a whole lot of them they'll say, hey, I got to feed my family. I'm just going to do whatever they want. And the people that they engage with know that, right? So they allowed that, they influence them accordingly to do those things. And then, you know, then there's the battle for the teachers and the battle for the parents who have no clue, because, you know, what goes on at that school level, they have no clue, the craziness.
Well, and I think we also have moved away from times where education was really looked at as a space where I trust these individuals are going to do what is best for my child, for my community. And I'm not saying that in totality is true, right? Because I think when we live in this space of an all or nothing, that is unrealistic. But I think overall there is this sentiment that, you know, you used to go home and you knew if you cut up in class, your mama was going to get that phone call and the teacher was right. Okay.
Oh yeah.
You knew,
every time.
You know, every time I tried, you know, I would try to, you know, butter it up before I got home, you know, to kind of play it off. But my mom believed whatever it was that teacher was calling and saying. And we've kind of gotten away from that space where, you know, the intentions were, hey, these individuals are doing right by my children, by the community, whatever it is. And there's a lot more questioning about, are we indoctrinating children? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? And that has trickled from teachers all the way up the ranks.
And I might push a little bit and say that there's a little nuance involved there. Nielsen data would suggest that the issue is institutional trust. So not so much, I don't trust what's happening in my kid's school and classroom. The data suggests that most parents are actually really pleased with the education that their kids are receiving in the school building. They feel safe with their kids there. Their kids come home smarter. They are happy with how their kid is being educated. The system, the institution of education in this country,
they don't trust.
They don't trust.
Not by a long shot, right? And so that's the sentiment has shifted. Parents are happy, but the observers from the outside, parents and community members, confused, disappointed, they feel sort of misinformed, right? What am I missing here? To your point, why is the thread not continuing as it did?
Yeah, so I guess that's my question, Malik. Like, what happened? When did that shift occur that we went from, hey, I believe in this institution, right? And I do at one point in time, you know, education is this great equalizer, right? It's meant to be that. So what occurred that now we don't have that level of trust in the institution?
That's a great question. I mean, because people at home still say, go to school, get an education, do it. I mean, there's a distrust. There is.
So where did that distrust begin to manifest itself? And granted, we know that that's probably been centuries worth of
unpacking.
I was like, wow, am I qualified to answer this?
What kind of time do we have?
I was gonna say something which I thought was interesting. I also wonder if it's just a distrust in society, right? Like, we're now in a space where, you know, anybody can say anything. There's not really driven by statistics as much anymore, right? And like, people don't trust people. So I go back to the example about the parent, right? So, you know, back in the day, parent would bring in, you bring something home from home to your mom, and she's like, your mom and dad, and you're like, listen, the teacher said X. Listen, you need to straighten up, do that. Now it's
Or I'm
like
coming up
the
to that
teacher
school.
the teacher, right? But now you can get that same thing, and the parents like, well, I don't know if I agree with that teacher, and saying that in front of the child, right?
I'm going to protect my kid, right?
I'm going to protect my kid, right? And so it's like you can see the evolution
of distrust
just happening in general, right? I think, which I wonder if that plays a huge part.
Are you equating that to just like an overall distrust in society?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where I was going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
I can't speak to like a philosophical switch, but I can't speak to an event shift. The Nielsen data that I talked about was on the heels of COVID. COVID happened. The response by our government was not strong. People immediately started to trickle down. In fact, during COVID, corporate leadership was trusted more than governmental leadership. So people were looking to their jobs to have a perspective, their CEOs to offer them advice on how to move forward, not the government. And so I don't know if that's when it started, but it definitely catalyzed where we find ourselves today. I am, human nature. When the going gets tough, you retreat, you go inward, right? Instinct kicks in to protect. And so I would imagine that has something to do, that sort of world event, right? It happened on the world stage. And people lost trust pretty quickly in the way that it was being dealt with. And then you think about the fact that schools had to completely shift the way that they operated, right? How kids were educated shifted in a week. And it just takes some getting back to, I think. I don't know that we won't see that day again, because I'm telling you, I talked to superintendents who their parents are thrilled, right? They're sharing, and they're sharing often, and they are in the communities, and they're shaking the hands. They are at the churches. It's not going to happen with a light switch, right? There's not some major event that we're waiting on that's going to take us back to where we were. We are the catalyzers. We have to put this thing back together. Public education continues to be the backstop of our democracy. Without this sort of equalizer, the disparities grow further. We need to protect this thing and make sure that all kids are receiving an excellent version of it, because they didn't choose to be born or their neighborhood.
Yes. Well, and I think going deeper into that, because I was in the classroom, that was actually COVID year was my last year in the classroom. And that was quite a doozy to end my teaching career, so to speak, that year. But I would piggyback on that, saying that that season of life and having parents see what and how potentially their child was being educated during that time really was a catalyst, so to speak, in using your words there, Malik, of, exposure to, curriculum and man, like, is this what kids should or shouldn't be learning? Delving deeper into, well, are traditional forms of schooling the only way that kids can learn? Just going and we can continue to go into things that parents saw. We also saw them say, you know what, you can take them back once next week.
Yes. But for the teachers, what a terrible, I hearken it to your principal walking in on a day where your kids just don't have it all together, right? Your principal coming in. What a way for teachers to be evaluated, right? Teachers didn't know how to teach in a virtual environment, but all of a sudden now all 25 of your parents are in earshot of your lessons, right? And so, I'm sure there was a credibility factor there that they had to overcome.
Yeah. And then was that another added layer of, is this where we start seeing more, a lack of trust in the system itself? Because let's not say that COVID is what, yes, it led to more distrust because overall government response and things, but the educational system over years has been broken, like dating back to when we started implementing No Child Left Behind and things of that nature.
So let me push on that, right? When we talk about broken, right? So like when we talk about education systems, right? So broken to me would be like, I think when people talk about that, they're about like how it functions, right?
Yes,
but
and whether or
kids,
not we're really serving children is my definition.
But kids are still learning in classrooms every day. They're still doing their math, their English, their those things,
but
right?
are we serving all kids?
Yeah, I mean, but that's an issue I would argue. If you ask me, which I think will be controversial, I'm about to say, but I think like separation, segregation, all that stuff happened. You learn that in schools. And the reason I bring that up is because I think that that's where you start seeing people separate, right? You can read, you can't read. Someone put you in these groups. You have access to this, you don't have access to that. You're going to take this test and be in this class and not this class, right? So forget race and all that.
You're saying that's like the first time children start experiencing
that? That's correct.
Yes.
And parents start to experience it in a way because I'm trying to protect my child, right? It's like, why is my child separate? Now, whether we agree or disagree on this, I tell folks, I learned when I was in schools that a child is behind starting in kindergarten. That's why I was pushing so hard for early child education and all that, because I could easily see if you're this socioeconomic, had these resources, your child, by the time they get to kindergarten, is going to be reading, doing X, Y, and Z. And if you didn't have these sets of socioeconomic resources or these things, you get here and now they're telling you to start at the same starting line, but you're not starting there, right? And you could add on if you're coming from a different country with languages and all that stuff. And then I started to say, okay, we're going to separate, we're going to this and all that. And there's this idealism in our head that, listen, we should give access to everybody in the same way. Now, access to me is important to give, right? But I think what schools do, and I don't think it's teachers or people's fault, is they get into, let me group and categorize you in a way which gets into all these other nuances, right? That turns us into this separation in schools and all this other stuff. And nobody talks about this because it's a touchy topic, right? Because it gets into I call it the taboo topics, right? It gets into the race component. It gets into the socioeconomic component.
Well, and then you're also now saying that now when we talk about education being like an equalizer, maybe it didn't start out that way.
That's correct. So hold on. So my point is, when we talk about it being broken, I think I refer to broken as the functionality of what our perception of what we thought it should be
versus
right?
It
actually is. And it perpetuates these divisions, right? And these divisions get deeper and deeper. Now you add environmental challenges, divisions on how people live in their groups in their communities. Think about the stuff, Malik, you said about, you came from South Philly, right? Well, most cities in America are segregated, right? Yeah. This group lives here, Black folks live here, white people live here, Latinos live here. Like, if you go to most of, and then you start adding integration of schools, you're adding all the, you start thinking about academic differences, like all of these factors, people think that the school is supposed to fix all that. And I would argue, like, that's insane.
Sure, but are they not? If my parent cannot, if my parent doesn't have the tools to get me what I need to have my reading brain ready for kindergarten, whose job is it to catch me up? It's not going to fall out of thin air, right? Which is why, which is why we talk about access for all kids, right? Like, I don't know that the system is broken as much as it is under attack, right? Like, we talk about access for all children, meaning, Sito, when a kindergartner comes in ready to read because they're from a family with resources and means, their mom was talking to them in the belly, they listen to Beethoven, whatever the strategy was. And then another baby is coming, they're in the exact same classroom, but he is not ready yet.
The access was different, right? The access was different.
Yes, the access and opportunity has been different for that kid. The job is on public education to make sure that this kid gets here and that they both grow together, right? Like, children need opportunities and to be met where they are, right? Like, it is, I believe, our job as educators to make sure that they're ready for the world. If that looks like being regressive, to catch them up to where other second graders are across the country, around the world, we should do that work. Caveat, that work requires resources, right? Our SPED babies aren't getting what they need, not because we don't want to hire SPED teachers. A lot of districts can't afford them because the budget is being impounded by the federal government. And so they're making concessions. These dollars from COVID that were used to sort of spread the sort of opportunity for kids that weren't getting what they need, those dollars are disappearing as well. And so you think about
they're
where these
officially
attacks are coming
gone.
from. Everything costs money. Exactly.
But we could push, right? Because you're going to hear the other position of that argument. People will say, well, we've been pouring dollars into education all these years and there's been no results. And I would argue is let's define what the results should be, right? If the results is get a job, okay, let's look at the average job numbers.
So you're saying we need to probably look at the metrics for success.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think I'm a big believer that you have to have a framework with clear metrics of success to then define the system you're trying to design. And
what gets measured gets done.
Gets done. And what I think nobody wants to say, right? I'm a big believer that everything happens by design, right? I moved up in the system.
The system is set up to get the results that the system wants.
I was in shock and awe at every level. I left the classroom, became a minister. I was like, this is what they're dealing with? I leave the next position I go up and I'm like, this is what they're dealing with? Like, now I'm good enough to like understand what they're going through because I sat in a seat, but every level was different. And then I went all the way to the top and I was like, this is crazy. This has got nothing to do with getting a kid to read, right?
Yeah.
But the rhetoric in public is we're all teaching them how to read, right? Right? Or yes, we want them all to have access. But what if I told you that there are people that only want you to have some access and not all? There are people saying you need to have this job, not that job. There are people saying, hey, you're going to fit here versus here, right? And this whole philosophical belief we have about we all should have access and all achieve is something that's said, but not designed to do.
So recognizing those powers, what are you, Sito, education extraordinaire, Sito black man, understanding the powers that be against what we want to be true? What are you going to do to fix it? You know what I mean?
Like, what does that look like?
We named the problem, but like we need plans in place to drive progress if we don't want it to be true forever.
So this is the part that we're excited about, right? Because our whole podcast is around Unlearned Unlimited, right? So I would tell folks, if you ask me my perspective, I think we need to unlearn some of these things, right? That we tell people about, but that's not what we really mean, right? Because
that's just not
in
the
society,
reality.
we do that a lot, right? I always say like, in relationships, they tell you this is what you got to whatever, but this is what they really mean, right? That's I used something with my mom, right? My mom passed away, but my mom in her house, like she may say this, but her look means something totally dang different, right?
It's literally advice we offer superintendents. We call it listening below the green line. What are they really trying to say?
So for us in the podcast, we call it unlearn, right? So we say, here's the things you need to unlearn, right? And then what you need to unlimit about is the solutions, right? So the question that we had was like, I remember we were talking about disruptive leaders, right? Leaders that get what you're saying. Like, what are the things that you've seen they do? Now, and I would argue, it don't matter where you are in the country, there are some commonalities about people who are like, I'm going to do it this way strategically, right? Because this is what's going to get this ball moving. What would you say that is?
Yeah, the superintendents that I would consider disruptors are not the ones kicking down the door, going in, screaming about what they want to be true for children in a year. They are the people that recognize that they're living in a fragmented society, that even within their communities, there is division, and they're listening before they lead. I won't name names, but I can tell you, a superintendent of a major city in the country, he's very passionate about education. You talk about a leader who wants Black kids to succeed. He's top 5 in my book of people who are passionate about Black student learning. He recognizes in his context that the rest of the state does not look like the city in which he sits. And so what has he done? He's gotten off of the soapbox, preaching to the community that understands what they need. Now he's going around the state, activating local politicians, advocating for his kids so that more people start to speak that language. It's another superintendent who works in a medium-sized district. She is addressing contention head on, walking into rooms that she knows are either against her or disagreeing with a policy that's going into place to really do the work of figuring out what is the issue? How do we solve it? what's in this for you? What's in this for kids? How do we get through this? The best leaders I know, the most disruptive ones, are walking toward the contention to come out on the other side, talking across party lines so they can get down the middle and achieve common ground for kids. Listening before you lead is how I'd put it. The visible, empathetic leaders are the ones that are riding this wave with success.
Well, and I think what I heard you say, like 2 common traits, I guess you would want to, I can frame them as, is like having courage, right? Like being willing to step out and do something that may be uncomfortable, but also the importance of collaboration, because at the end of the day, their work requires them to collaborate and work across party lines and to talk to people that may or may not believe in some of their initiatives or what they want, what they feel is most important. So I took away like those 2 things. Is there anything else? I mean, and obviously being visionary, would you add anything else to what you call, your disruptive leaders, so to speak?
Yeah, they believe in rehearsed theater.
Oh, okay.
So,
Say more. Yeah, say more.
The idea that politics, getting people to make decisions, agree, it's all an act. This is all things that you can predict and sort of act out before it happens. My most prolific members are the ones that are on the phone with me before the meeting. Like, I know this lady doesn't like me. Like, here's what I was going to say. How does that sound? You know what I mean? Like, working through the mechanics of contention, right? Like, because I'll tell you what, the person who comes out of that, whatever the conversation is, whatever the contention is, the person who comes out of it with the demeanor that says, I'm more mature, they win. You know what I mean? It's hard to refute kindness. It's hard to refute sort of right thinking. And so how do you think about this in a way that allows you to leave your emotions at home, leave your personal bias at the door, so that you're talking in a way that people want to listen to, right? Facts are not going to change anyone's minds here. And so working through the idea that the data is not going to be the needle mover and really understanding what the other person's motivation is to solve the challenge. That might be the last thing I'd add there, Tatiana.
That's awesome.
This is that point I was just thinking about, like, I mean, how many people that you walked into a room with where you like, man, I know these people don't like me.
Oh, yeah.
But I got to like engage with them and have a conversation. I mean, I think now society's like, yo, bump that. I'm going to let them know how I really feel. But like the reality is, if you're going to try to move something to get it done, you got to figure out a way, no matter how extreme the other person's position is how to engage them to move towards a space of collaboration, even if they don't want to collaborate.
Well, and I think there's this reality that stepping away from like, I need everybody to agree with me, because that is unrealistic.
Yeah.
And going into a space of, I need some form of consensus. Like, we're willing to move the lines towards X, because we're willing to try this thing. Like, we feel like this may work, because again, the full agreement, getting everybody on board, that ain't it. No, that ain't it.
So most leaders are so, we start off by asking about most leaders are they followers or are they leaders, right? If I had to ask you out of 100%, I'm going to do a pie chart test and say to you, out of 100%, break that down to me. This numbers of followers, these folks look like,
they're somewhere in the middle.
And they're these folks like, who are actually getting it done out of 100% pie. Now, I don't want to get no trouble by making these comments, because they're like, when I play the tape, be like, yo, Malik said this, and Malik, what number am I in the percentage of the pie?
I know. Like, what were you thinking about when you gave that number? Was I in there?
I got to speak this up because, Caitlin and Maura used to say to me, speak my truth.
Yes, that's the truth. You're not going to love my answer to the question. The real response is 100% of my members are in this for the right reason. And it's because you can't just become a Leading Now member. There's a screening process to make sure that this work is going to drive access for all kids forward. And so by the time they come into a cohort, I'm clear what you're in this for, and if you're not, then you're on the other side of the application.
Let me push you a little bit. What about let's just include people not in the leading now, right?
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, leading now is specific. They go after people who a particular profile that can do certain thing and have occurred, And I'm not, that we know. But what about if you looked at the rest of the nation? Because there's 15,000 plus school districts in the United States,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you guys have to engage with thousands of folks, even outside of the Leading Now network, because you guys do stuff, right? So if you had to give 100% pie, right? And you
how would you divvy that up?
How'd you divvy that up?
I get a report every morning to my desk that it contains the names of my members to see who was flagged in the media. It also sometimes will include buzzwords that bring other superintendents into my sphere. If I had to put a number on it, I would say 20 to 25% of messages that I see would lead me to believe that that's the amount of folks that may not be in it for the right reasons. And I say this because I am in real time watching excellent leaders be moved out of the superintendency and replaced by a highly visible, highly political successor. You combine that with watching the board dynamics adjust year over year, and it starts to resonate that there may be a larger structure at play here. And so my feelings about who's not in it, largely, I believe that all superintendents are in it for the right reasons. But I to your questions, I can't, there's always going to be someone you're side-eyeing, right? And so from my reports every morning, I'm able to deduce and just piece some of the puzzle together to go, okay, now, why did they just push her out? And why is he coming in now? I just Googled his name and I can see the amount of contention that they face, but it's contention in a certain light. And this seems to be the way that it's political strategy, right? And circumventing it is difficult. But that's what I see from my desk. It's largely everyone's doing this for all kids, but I do think that there are some larger political games at play that are putting some folks that may not have kids' best interests at heart at the helm of leadership.
Now, I want to delve a little bit into, as we talk about turnover or pushing people out or being in for the right reasons. I saw something that I would like for you to chat a little bit about as we're getting prepped to wrap up here. You have been amazing, and this conversation has been so good, especially as we're passionate people about education. We love education, whether we work directly in schools or not anymore. That's neither here nor there. But one of the things that I read about Leading Now is that your superintendents show a 13% turnover compared to the national average, which is about 5 percentage points or more, give or take, above that. So I think the national turnover is about 18%. Yep. What would you say? I'm not asking you to give me the tea about your superintendents now.
Give the tea, man. Give the tea. Listen, give the tea.
Why would you say that for those individuals that do engage with Leading Now compared to those that may not? What is the difference there? Why is your percentage for the ones that you work with, why is that lower?
Here's the tea. We do some really good strategic communication skill development. You know what I mean? That's part one. But part two, more seriously, is we were talking about this earlier in the chat. The power of community. What's the old saying? If you want to go fast, go along. You want to go far, go together. That is why I am telling you the power in community. I've used that term already, but having someone that has your back, having a community of people that you can go to for perspective, feeling less alone. Every time I meet a superintendent as a prospect, that's one of the first things they tell me is no one understands me. Sito started talking about it. I got people, but I know that I can't say this to that person. I won't say that to that person. She's going to tell her, you know what I mean? And so they feel very lonely. They're perceived as sitting up in this ivory tower. They can't truly tell people how they feel. And then they suddenly get exposed to a room where they're able to speak their mind with challenges that their peers are understanding, and it puts a battery in their back. It charges them up. suddenly when you're in these moments and it's the superintendent and 9 board members on either side of you, you can recall that there's people that have your back, right? That there's a community that sort of led you to do this, that there are other people invested in the same work for the same reasons that are doing this in 600 miles away from you. I think that there's something affirming in that. I think that it encourages people to keep going. I can get emotional about the number of superintendents who tell us consistently, this was burning me out. Like, I thought I was about to head out of here. Like, thank you for this. I'm staying at least another year because I know that this is behind me. Or I have friends now, people that understand my challenges. So aside from the really unique skill development opportunities, it's a lot about community. It's a lot about having support. I can't think of a more lonelier role than the superintendent. They need each other.
Yeah. I mean, as again, as we like look to wrap up, I think we always like to ask our guests, is there anything like you'd like to close with, or, that talks about, what have you unlearned? What's been unlimited? But I think you hit on some of that in terms of unlearning, because there are times that climb to success. Sometimes we feel like, well, I'm on this road by myself, and I'm on this journey by myself, and I'm just gonna, thug it out, grind it out by myself. But when you do get to those positions at the top, it can feel very lonely.
Absolutely.
So you have to sometimes you have to unlearn that, like, I need community in order to be able to do this thing.
100%.
And then there's that sense of unlimited, like, now there are boundless possibilities because I do have this community in doing this work.
Yeah, that's right. And that community can engage not only in your family life, but in all the aspects of your life. Yeah, because those jobs are much, much tougher, I think, than people anticipate. And it also, in some way, I think, it gives you such a different way of looking at communities. I always said that the hardest part of my job, I remember when I had the opportunity to sit in that seat, had nothing to do about getting the kid to read. I thought that was the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting everybody else to believe that the kid could read. Right? And they deserve this, and you can give them that by this resource. That was the hardest thing. And not separating groups, right? Didn't matter whether you were black, white, yellow, or green, you came from this community, not that. Like, the bottom line was that, right? That's why I kept asking about, like, what is the system should design to do, right? And I'm not always clear, and I believe that the metrics that people talk about are the metrics that people really want, right? And so, and I think if they rethink that impact would have a much, much different space. But we can talk about that on the next time you come in, Malik.
Yeah. Well, if I had to, I'm excited. I'm excited to keep it going. But if I had a final piece of, like, anything, I might speak to the superintendent directly and let them know you are not alone. This space is uncharted. We have never been here before as a country, though the stress that you feel is acute and accurate. But I also want to tell them that you're not supposed to have all the answers, that playbooks can be designed as you go. And the smartest thing you can do right now is build trust in your local community. People who will tell you the truth, people who want to hear the truth, and support your leadership when it matters most. If you are a superintendent listening to this, you are not where you are by accident. You are the right person in the right seat at the right time. Keep going. Kids need you, despite the adult politics. Perhaps that's what I'd say.
Let's go ahead and put a plug in. Malik's going to be back.
Yeah, Malik. So we're going to have thank you for coming. We're going to have I know we're going to get a second opportunity with you, and hopefully you get to come to the studio in person.
Oh yeah, I'm coming this time. We'll be in person next time. Let's go deeper.
Oh, absolutely. And let Caitlin and know they're invited to if they want to come down too. So
I'll let them know.
Get different lenses. If you like what we shared and you like the show, please make sure you want to contribute. Make sure you share, like, subscribe to our show. Malik Ray is part of the Leading Now work, and he's really excited as he talks about what leaders around the country think about around this work. And we also learned a whole lot about whether leaders are followers, in the way that they're doing the work. But we'll bring him back to talk some more. Like I said, make sure that you tune in to our show. Share, like, subscribe. Me and Tatiana are always excited when we're seeing people in that work. We try to make sure we can bring many leaders like Malik in to talk to us, to give you the real and learn about what the Unlearned Unlimited. So great show, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thanks,
Unlearned
Sito and
Unlimited.
Tatiana. It's been a pleasure.